Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tessian's Human Layer Security Summit. I'm Kelly Hogan, Head of Marketing Communications at Tessian, and I am so excited to be your host for the day. On behalf of everyone at Tessian, our speakers, and our sponsors, I want to thank you all for tuning in from across the globe. We started this event over a year ago with one goal in mind: to bring CISOs, CIOs, and risk and compliance leaders together to grow and propel the human layer security movement. And we've heard loud and clear that security teams are stretched thin and need to maximize their people, processes, and programs. And over the last 6 months in particular, in roundtable conversations and one-on-one meetings, we've heard that many of you have very real concerns about attacks getting past your existing defenses, about creating lasting employee behavior change without disrupting their workflow, and about positioning yourself as a trusted partner to the executive team or the board. Well, today you're in luck. We have gathered some of the best and brightest minds in the industry to give practical advice on how to tackle these specific challenges. Our speakers include leaders and experts from Unilever, Evercore, KnowBe4, SAN, Mishcon, Tessian, and many more world-renowned institutions and organizations. So, you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the sessions that we have lined up for you. But there are ways for you also to get involved. We would love for you to join the discussion by sharing your thoughts or asking any questions. And you can do that by simply clicking on the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen. On the next tab, you'll also find resources like reports and worksheets that correspond to the topic of each session. For those of you joining via LinkedIn Live, there's a link to the chat in the description below. And if you experience any technical difficulties, you can contact us directly at events@tessian.com. We have a team standing by who will help troubleshoot. Last but not least, please use the hashtag if you're sharing any insights or learning on your social media channels so that we can track the conversation. So, without further ado, let's begin. I am delighted to introduce our very first panel session entitled How to Hack a Human, hosted by Trevor Luker, Tessian's VP of Information Security. Over to you, Trevor.
Thank you, Kelly, and for the introduction, and hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining. Today, hackers are using everything at their disposal to build targeted campaigns to get past phishing defenses. That's why I'm delighted to be joined by Jenny Radcliffe, founder of Human Factor Security, and James McQuiggan, security awareness advocate from KnowBe4, to discuss the steps hackers are taking to build these advanced attacks, and most importantly, how we can protect ourselves against them. However, before we open our panel discussion, I'd like to take you through some of the latest research from our report, How to Hack a Human. The report highlights exactly why these attacks leave our people so vulnerable. Over the last decade, phishing, one of the most prevalent forms of social engineering attack, has evolved from bulk, sort of fire and forget campaigns to highly targeted threats that are now most likely to cause a breach. During the same period, the number of adults on social media platforms like Facebook, etc., has increased by almost 1,300%. This is not a coincidence. Hackers hack humans to hack the companies they work for. And a lot of the heavy lifting can be done by social media and other publicly available information. Across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we post photos of ourselves and our families. We announce when we get to a new job or a promotion. We share up-to-date details about our work trips, personal travel plans. We leave these breadcrumbs, these little tidbits of information, which on their own are innocuous, but combined with the skills of a skilled hacker, they offer an incredible amount of information that hackers can leverage to create a sophisticated social engineering attack. Let's imagine for a scenario that a hacking group is financially motivated. So they monitor Newswise for information about banks to find their target. One day they see this headline: Dowling Clayton, a law firm, has been hired to advise SoBank, an asset management firm, on a joint venture with Ardent Tech. So for hacking groups, it's game on. A simple search for SoBank on LinkedIn reveals that Andrew Neil is the CFO. A quick visit to Andrew's profile reveals that he's heading off to Money Talks 2021 on March the 8th and will be out of the office. Perfect. Finding Andrew's email is a breeze. So on March 8th, Our hacker shoots him over a message and receives his out-of-office reply. The out-of-office message directs the hacker to Andrew's point of contact, Tristan Porter, head of accounts at Sobank. Now they have the target. They also know that Andrew goes by Andy. Realistically, this is enough information to craft a fairly sophisticated attack. They could simply impersonate Andy and send an email to Tristan asking him to divert funds to a similar account number. But a savvy employee would take likely steps to verify the diverted payment. So the hackers take an extra step. Remember the headline, announcing that Dorling Clayton was advising Sobank. Our hackers do a bit more research by visiting Dorling Clayton's website. They find out that Gregory Elwood is a senior partner. With this information in mind, the hacker can fabricate an entire email thread in plain text. No domain impersonation or spoofing required. In his email thread, it looks like Gregory urgently needs account details changed. Andrew responds, saying that he'll have Sobank head of accounts handle that right. This email thread is then copy and pasted into an email, and our hackers draft an urgent appeal from Andy to Tristan. In the plea, our hackers use the information they've garnered. They make sure they reference the fact that real Andy's out of the office for the week. They sign off as Andy instead of Andrew. The sense of urgency is there. And for Tristan, there's no need to seek additional approval. The email thread is enough. He updates the account information, makes the payment. CEO fraud attack, success. Now, this is just one example of the many complex steps attackers are taking today to build effective attacks. And in that regard, I'd like to welcome Jenny and James to the discussion to help further dissect this sort of scenario a bit further. So, Jenny, perhaps I could start with you. You hack humans, it's your job. So why is targeted social engineering so effective, and how does it differ from just bulk phishing attacks? And perhaps, James, you'd like to deal in later.
Yeah, I mean, hi, but great to be here. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of people think that they'll spot phishing emails and phishing attacks. Generally, they think they can spot an approach because it might be clumsy. And certainly with sort of the standard phishing emails that we all know so much about, that might be true. But like you say, if it's a more targeted approach, if an attacker uses research, they can personalize these things. They can add credibility, they can add trust, familiarity, all those things going into any approach, an email approach particularly, which gives it that bit of distance, but also makes it sound very credible. And really, I think that's why people fall for this all the time, because they're expecting it to look like one thing, and actually it looks like another thing. It looks more credible, it's very convincing, it seems familiar. And when you put all those elements together, it's very hard for a human to really spot that and bust it at every step of the way.
Cool. And James, taking that a little bit further, what psychological tactics do attackers use? Impersonating those in authority positions is the obvious one, but have you got some more from your field that you might want to explain and take further?
Yeah, a lot of the time, people as humans, we're just naturally trusting, out of the gate, so to speak. So when it comes to getting emails and there's that rapport that's being built, whether it's a bit of information in there that, we start to trust, and they think, oh, okay, then I really know who this is. And okay, that's fine. And we've, over the last 10, 20 years, we've been training people to spot the misspellings in the broken English or broken language. And they start crafting them and evolving those emails and pulling in little bits of information that they can, so that they can quickly build, as Jenny was saying, that credibility, build up that rapport, so that we can trust that, oh, okay, this is really who it say it is. But there has to be a sense of awareness and understanding that, when you're getting that kind of information coming to you and it looks like, it's coming from a particular person, sometimes it doesn't hurt to take the next step and possibly trust the email, but verify it as well. Either reach out through a second connection, text message, phone call, to kind of verify, hey, did you just send this? Did you want this account changed? It's kind of, depending on the severity of the email, is usually that, good first step.
Yeah. And Jenny, from your perspective, there's just a huge amount of information out there at the moment. So where would you sort of, if you were doing this sort of scenario, where would you typically go? Out of office requests, LinkedIn posts, anything else that you might think of from your side?
See, if we've got a company in our sights as a target, it's a funnel of information. So what we do is we'd start on a macro level and really look at that organisation very carefully. So its history, its hierarchy, and its attitude to hierarchy. So there's a lot of kind of like broad cultural measures that we'd really be trying to get a sense of the organisation. And then we start to narrow it down to who's got the information we might be looking for, where are the gatekeepers, where's even like the real sources of power within an organisation, because that might not necessarily be according to some sort of organizational chart or job title. They're the people who lead other people, even though they're not necessarily called leaders. They're the people other people follow, who hold the keys and information, who other people trust. So we'd look at those, and we'd also look for people who are chatty online, people who give information out online. Some people are much more cautious than others. And then what we do, from that broad brush, then we'd start to narrow it down to maybe 12 to 20 individuals, eventually narrowing it down to our target 2 or 3. And we'd look for information all over the place. I mean, one place that we've found in the past year quite a lot of information has been a restaurant review sites. I'm not going to say the name of the main one, but everyone knows where I mean. But where you go and you review meals and things, because then we can see kind of people's patterns of how they celebrate, when their birthdays are, who their family are. A photograph of a table gives all sorts of information of who's got what and sort of eats what and is at the table at that birthday. And it sounds very innocuous, doesn't it? It sounds like a very tenuous link. But really what we're always looking for as social engineers is to build this picture of a target organization and then to loop in as many little bits and pieces of information as we can so that when that approach is made, it really hits home. Right. And so, it can be emails with offers for discounts on food, or it can be, chats about, going to a restaurant one night or whatever. But it's picking up on what James says in terms of picking up on those little bits of details that build rapport. We know so much about the target by the time we approach them that we can throw in these little elements of commonality. And it's those very often that just warm that target up and get the shields down. And that's really what we're looking to do.
And James, does that worry you? Everybody's obviously got a right to their personal, professional lives and ideally keep them separate, but there's a lot of overlap. And there's an increasing amount of personally concern that what people do online could put the company at risk. What's your thoughts on that?
So, and it's going to depend on the size of your organization, but enterprise organizations, small, possibly definitely medium-sized organizations, you want to make sure that you have some sort of policy in place with regards to your social media. You're going to have your communications and marketing team and those fine folks that are putting out information about the organization, but then you have employees that work there that need to be aware of, okay, it's your first day here at Acme Company. We don't go posting our brand new ID badge showing where we work and saying how excited you are, because a lot of people, they're excited. They want to share it with their friends that, hey, I just got this great new job. I'm working at Acme Company. Check out my cool new badge. Well, for a social engineer, that kind of information is gold because now they can craft that. Sometimes it even comes down to the other social media that's out there, like Instagram and Facebook, and people are posting, similar to what Jenny was talking about with regards to the food reviews, but you've got the cafeteria folks and the canteen folks that, the organization that works there, that kind of leverages as well. So you want to make sure that an organization has a policy informing their employees of what they can and what they shouldn't be posting online to effectively protect the company overall is what we're doing. We know everybody's excited about certain things, but when it comes to certain work events or functions, you leave that to the marketing team to be able to post that.
Okay, cool. And Jenny, from your perspective, I guess what would make your job a little bit harder? What programs or controls should be put in place to help employees know what they should or shouldn't do and share online? Obviously, policies are one thing. Is there specific advice we should be giving people?
The thing is that no amount of training's necessarily going to make someone connect with that message. The thing to do is to show them that they're going to protect the organization sort of inadvertently if they protect themselves. So the thing to really stress with employees is, a social engineer, malicious social engineers will target those people. And if those people lose their privacy or get in trouble because they've made a mistake or have been manipulated or lose some money or their identity on the way, that's just collateral damage for a criminal. They're not really interested in how much it hurt your feelings on the way to the target of the business. So the way to really make people comply with this and understand it is to explain to them that, they are a target as well. And I say it very often, people think that they're not rich enough or important enough to be hacked, but everyone's worth hacking. Everyone's a node on a network and everyone has potentially a little piece of information. And if a criminal can pick something up on the way, I don't like to refer to it as hackers because hackers aren't all criminals, right? But it's a criminal. If a criminal can pick something up on the way or hurt somebody's life on the way, they're not interested in the damage that they cause. So what we find, and when we do these kind of engagement programs, is getting people to understand that by protecting themselves, the company gets protected anyway. It's incidental to them almost.
No.
And that's really how you get people engaged in it.
Oh. Okay. And now, from hackers are always designing new impersonation methods, they're designing new attacks, they're designing and pulling together all of these breadcrumbs and so forth. What happens when somebody receives something like this? How obvious is it to the recipient, James?
That it comes down to a lot of things, especially relating to, I'll say, awareness. You might get that phishing email, but if you don't know the telltale signs of what to look for, or the questions to ask yourself when you get this particular email. Am I expecting this email? Is this somebody I know? Is there an action? Is there something in here that's making me have a strong emotional response? Now, those are a lot of questions to ask yourself very quickly. But like anything else that we do in life, the more you repeat it and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get and the more it becomes part of your behaviors. It becomes part of essentially second nature for you. So, I know personally within my organization, we're constantly phished, always. And it's a matter of having to be vigilant. And I find myself, I'm a little more vigilant with my work email than I am with my personal email, because I know my personal email gets all kinds of spam and junk and stuff coming in. So I'm only looking for specific things or emails that I'm actually expecting. But with work, with the business email, there's so much more emails that are coming in. And so I have to have that little extra heightened sense of awareness with regards to those emails that are coming in and going through those questions and going, okay, am I really, they just sent me this PDF that they want me to open. Okay, was I expecting it? Even though it's about the new benefits, is there another place I can go and look at this particular document that's supposed to be coming from inside our organization? So it's going to be slow at first and it's painful, and folks might end up giving up because they're like, I don't have time for this. I've got to do my work. But this is all part of that behavior and that culture, as Jenny was touching upon, with regards to protecting the organization and getting it a part of who you are, as well as then allowing that to carry over into the work environment as well.
Thank you. And Jenny, from obviously an ethical hacker's perspective, what makes these attacks and advanced attacks like this, using this sort of information, so much more dangerous and so much more perilous for organizations? We've gone through some of the things in the background, but what caution would you advise a company to take?
The problem is that I, as an outsider looking to, as you say, ethically simulate these attacks in organizations, I shouldn't know your people better than you. I shouldn't be able to do that. And no matter how big the organization is, at line manager level, we really need to understand our people and know when they're struggling, know when they're stressed, which everyone has been in this last year or so. And really understand when those kind of factors are coming into play, because if we don't understand our people, we don't put the emphasis on people, someone else will, but in a malicious way. And I think that's really, my message when I go into organizations is we have to work with the technology. The technology has to stop people having to make these decisions as best we can, because if we can get through to a human being can be bribed, they can be coerced, they can be fooled, they can be manipulated. So, it's really about connecting very well with people. And of course, that's difficult to do these days when we're all so spread out, we're all working from home, and we're all very stressed. And our tech teams and our security teams have slightly less control than they did in the past over what devices we're using and how vigilantly we're kind of updating and things. So those, it's that type of advice really that I give to companies. Your people need to know what to do. So they need to be aware of it constantly. And that message needs to be updated in a non-boring way. And they need to know what to do when they find something suspicious. And they need to be supported when they report it in. And those things are all about human connections. The tech backs it up. And without good tech, we are completely bare to this. But we've got to work with the people as well. It's a pincer movement, if you like, to try and squeeze out attackers. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. And James, from your perspective, you're at the pointy end of this business for some from defenses as well. So how would you say, how well protected are we? Hackers are constantly evolving new attacks. They're developing techniques to bypass certain known phishing defenses and so forth. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a certain level of risk, and in security, it's all about risk and managing that risk and how we address it. When we get in our cars and we drive down the road, there's a certain risk that we take as well. That we do arrive home safely. The same risk is there. When we log into our computers every day, or we're checking our email, and we're seeing all the emails coming through, and making sure that that. Part of it is we want that technology to stop everything, to stop all the bad emails and be able to recognize it. And I have to say that it has gotten better over the years. I can think back to when I was doing security awareness training at one organization over 10 years ago. And it was all about, watch out for the simple messages, the zip files that were attached, no graphics, and as technology, as the cyber criminals have gotten better, technology has evolved with them. It's that cat and mouse game, having to keep up. I honestly believe that the cyber criminals are out there buying the same technology that all our organizations are, and they're throwing their phishing emails against those devices to see what gets through those email gateways, secure email gateways, firewalls, all that technology. They're trying to find what gets through. And when they do, it's like, okay, well, that one, we know that one works. And then use that as part of their repertoire. So, the technology is still evolving, trying to get better, artificial intelligence, machine language, all the good buzzwords. But as it's evolving, so are the cyber criminals. And so we're constantly having to evolve and keep up with that. But the technology is going to do its part, but we as the human element have to make sure that we're doing our part and having that awareness and the behaviors and the cultures to be able to spot that and either report it to the necessary folks within our organization so they can then use technology maybe to rip the email out of the mailbox or quarantine or do whatever, but then still, be able to take that necessary actions once they've received word from within the business.
Okay, thanks. And I guess, it sort of comes back over something we've discussed a little bit earlier, but, protecting the individual is going to protect the corporation. But Jenny, perhaps any tips for personal enterprise level security that you could think off your head that you'd say, just do it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a case of it's still communication. It's all the things that just sound very trite. It's communication's the thing. People need to have somewhere they can go and ask questions. They need to know what it is, organization to organization. But one of the things that I kind of want to add to the previous discussion really is that we talk about the way the threat evolves, and we talk about attackers evolving. And, and I think I agree with what James said wholeheartedly on that. But what I will say is that it doesn't really change what they manipulate, right? So the human qualities that attackers will go for stay the same. And all that really happens with technology is that the tool that they use changes. But the method to catch out humans out stays the same. And so what we do is the awareness piece is letting people understand what they are. And it always comes down to sort of four things. It's if they rush you, if money is mentioned, if they ask you to go outside the rules, and if there's emotional content. And if those four things are in there and people recognize them, it really doesn't matter how you're approached or in what way they do it. Even a deep fake, for example. Now, I've been asked a lot about deep fakes. Well, how would you know? How would you know? Well, you would know because they would rush you. They'd ask you to break rules. They'd mention money. And it would be emotional, and all of those things are the things that really, that's your personal security, that's your personal enterprise security, that's everything you need. And it sounds it's like it can't be that simple. Well, sometimes things are simple, that doesn't make them easy. And that's really what we've got here. So, the tech will sort of defang the attacks, the emails and everything else. But what we've got to try and do is get people ready to defang a human who's trying to manipulate them. And those are the things that really matter the most. And they've always mattered. It's always been that way ever since the first human wanted to fool the second human into giving them something. And it'll stay that way no matter what the tech does, because that's just how it goes. That's just how humans are manipulated. And that'll continue to be the case.
Well, I'd like to ask both of you, actually, coming back to the sort of the tech. It's clear that traditional rule-based secure email gateways are not keeping up with some of the more advanced attacks these days. So what measures as security leaders, what can we put in place to mitigate these attacks to both to the employees and the business? Go for it. James.
So, yeah, a lot of that with the leader, and Jenny touched upon it, and I really liked it. The managers and the line managers, they got to know their employees. We're all stressed. We're all distracted. A lot of people working from home. It's no longer your office worker. It's the kids and the dogs and the cats and the construction going on next door that serve up to it. But having that communication and providing, having the training, having the awareness, working to improve the culture, the behaviors, that all comes together. It's not something that's going to happen overnight or in a week. It's something that is going to take some time, 6 months to a year to really get that behaviors and that culture in place, because we can't exactly change our behaviors overnight. Cold turkey maybe, but that's different. But going back, touching upon what Jenny was saying with regards to the lures, the money, the urgency, I think back to the Twitter attack last year where you had a couple teenagers gain access into the blue checkbox, and they create a couple of, they created several tweets from celebrities, people that had a lot of money, that said, hey, give us $1,000 in Bitcoin. We'll give you $2,000 back, or pounds. But you only do it we're only doing this for the next 30 minutes. And I remember seeing that tweet, and I'm like, yeah, right. That's just, there's something weird about that. And lo and behold, but still, you had 120 people fork over $1,000 in Bitcoin. And eventually, the bad guys got caught. But that sense of urgency and money, and if it's too good to be true, it usually is. But with all the technology that we've got and everything with regards to that human element, it's getting them that awareness. A lot of the times I hear people say, humans are the weakest link. And I counter that by saying, no, they're your strongest asset. They just need to be educated. They need to be made aware. Granted, they may not care, but if they know that it's a part of the organization and a part of the culture, then they'll go along and adapt. But it's all a matter of getting that culture and behavior and awareness to everybody, and making sure that they're feeling a part of the organization, that they're there protecting it as well, and it's not just an IT thing or the security department thing.
And Jenny, is anything you'd like to add to that?
I mean, James is right. That's exactly what you need to do, and it's really the only thing that you can do to protect. I finish a lot of my talks and I say, are we the weakest link? A lot of people think we're the weakest link, and I say, here's the thing, we can be a weak link. Humans can be. We all can be. I can be. Anyone can be hacked. Anyone can be socially engineered, and we have to kind of accept that. And once you kind of accept that can be the case, there's an arrogance that disappears. I can be caught out just like anyone else can, and that kind of removes a little bit of blame. from working with users, which is something that's not helpful in the industry, and that we're all, we still battle against a little bit. So there's that. And then saying to people, well, you can be a defense. And I finish my talks, I say, with the weakest link or are we the strongest defense? We're all just human. And that makes us fallible, but it also gives us these qualities of being able to fight back and of being able to kind of unite behind that cause. And I think that's really partly what James was sort of touching on, and it's what I'd agree with. You can mobilize the eyes and ears in your organization. You can mobilize that army, and you can have them there vigilant, watching out for each other, and if someone gets past, then, well, someone gets past, nothing is unhackable. Sooner or later, someone's going to get through, but we can slow them down. The tech can slow them down. The people can slow them down. We can limit the damage if they do get through. And we can make sure that it's not devastating when it happens to somebody, because they've got support and backup and empathy. And I think all of those things turn what can be seen as a very technical practice and a technical crime into something that's profoundly human. And if we can stick with that and big that up in the industry, then that can only be a good thing, because that's the one thing that's probably going to stop these people getting through and doing the damage that we see all the time. So that's what I would have.
Thanks for that. Look, we're almost at time now, but I'm just curious, from both of your perspective, what's the one thing you'd like people to take away from this session today? James?
One thing to take away from today's session, I'm stalling, you can tell. I think a lot of it is, we're all human. Jenny said it, we're all human. We're all fallible. We make mistakes. We can learn from those mistakes. I have a colleague at KnowBe4 who's been in this industry 30 plus years. And in the time that he's been at KnowBe4, he's fallen for 3 of the phishing attacks. And he's in the industry and he knows the concept. Knock wood, I'm still good. I haven't clicked on any of the links through KnowBe4 yet, because then you go through remedial training. But, it's just a matter of, if it was your home, you would take the necessary precautions to protect against burglars, motion sensor lights, alarm system, a beware of dog sign at the front window, even if you have 3 cats. But you take the necessary steps to make sure that you're protected. You're protecting your home. Same thing applies with regards to your social media, with regards to your email, have your profiles locked down on social media, make sure you're checking those emails, take the same concepts and principles that you apply at home and bring them into the office and have that vigilance as well. Because if you do it at home, most likely you're going to do it in the office.
And Jenny?
So I would say, just to add to that would be, it's kind of a bit like being a presenter in an online conference. Okay. So before you go live and you get the thumbs up to say, right, we're ready and we're broadcasting live, and I do a live chat show and have a podcast. What you have to do is you assume the mic is always on and the camera's always live. And that's what people really need to do. They need to assume the mic is on, assume the camera's live, assume that everyone's reading what you're putting online, and what I say to people is try and think, what would a malicious individual do with this information? And then what we do is we say, okay, and then make a decision, right? And be guided by the programs that we have in our work, be guided by the advice that we receive online. But, at the end of the day, it's a decision it's a free country. We can post what we like. As long as that's an informed decision, then people tend to look after themselves better and they tend to be more secure. As long as they realize the consequences of someone always watching and that it could be used against you. And then in that, the sort of final, the kind of soundbite is know your people well. Because if you don't get to know your people really well, someone like me will. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what side of that fence you're sitting on.
Awesome. Thanks for that. It's been a really fascinating discussion. We're afraid we're out of time. And I'd like to personally thank Jenny and James for your insights. For me, this conversation really just highlights just how risky social engineering email really is and how frighteningly easy it is for an attacker to manipulate an employee into complying with requests and just based on public information. Now back to Kelly, who'll take us on to the next session, where we can discuss how to isolate and protect against these attacks that common defenses can't detect.